So this is episode 4 of the Fuel by Purpose podcast. So Elijah, bro, it's been what, almost 2 months since we last met at the event. That last night at the event, it was lit. I'm not gonna hold you. Me, you, Dyson, who else? Will, Ben. I think one more person I'm missing. Who?
Arthur.
Yeah, yeah, bro. So a lot's happened since then because you were in what, door to door or HVAC sales before, and now you finally transitioned into the online high ticket space. So just give us a rundown. It's like what's transpired in those last few months.
Yeah, so first off, thanks for having me on here. But what's kind of transpired, and it was gutters and gutter protection sales in person. I put my 2 weeks in after I left that meetup, joined Dylan's community, and then after I joined Dylan's community, my boss with my in-person role didn't really need me to finish my 2 weeks. He was just kind of like, all right, appreciate the notice. You can go do whatever you need to do. And then after that, I had this transition period where I didn't have much to do. So I was like, screw it, I'm gonna go to Europe. So I went and traveled Europe for a month, and then I got back 3 weeks ago, and then just hit the ground actively applying. And then about a week ago, I went through a three-interview process. 3 interviews, they asked for like 8 references, 2 managers, and I finally got the job. So yeah, I'm excited to hit the ground running. But other than that, I've basically just been focusing on training for a marathon and just trying to get in shape.
I love that, bro. I've been seeing you posting on IG, and after the first post I saw, I was like, I definitely have to get Elijah on here. And then you kept on posting training for the marathon. I was like, we definitely need this guy on here because that's one of the biggest thing and something I'm becoming better at executing on is when I say I'm going to do something, actually sticking through and doing it. So has the marathon been a thing you've been trying to do for a long time, or it's just something spur of the moment? You're like, want to really push myself and I'm doing it.
It's been in the back of my mind for like the past 2 years, but nothing I've really like had my sights set on. And then I would say about 6 months to a year ago, I started seeing more content on social media about people getting into running. I've also been curious about like Ironmans and things like that. That's a way later time. I gotta focus on the marathon first, one step at a time. But I like to push myself and put myself through difficult things to kind of show myself what I'm capable of. Because when I first got into running, I could barely run a mile without struggling. Now I can run 6 miles in an hour and not really be like too gassed afterwards. Still keep my heart rate in that healthy heart rate zone to where I'm getting a good workout and I'm not overexerting myself. So it's awesome to see what consistency can do to your entire life. Just consistency is key.
How many miles are you typically getting on on a training day?
So it's not an everyday thing. I made sure to put in rest days and then strength training days to kind of work on my core and my legs. But on average during the week, and it increases like 10% every week. This last week I ran 15 miles. The next week it's going to be like 18 and then 20, 22, whatever. Just going to keep going up.
For the marathon, it's in April. What's going to be like the full, how do I say, breakdown? How many miles do you have to run?
26.2.
6.2? So,
26.2.
oh, 26.2. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Have you done a half already, or are you just going straight to the full?
Go big or go home.
I respect it. Were you like a long distance runner or anything like that in high school?
No, dude, I'm 6'9", 215. I was always a heavier guy. I was 280 in high school, so I lost a bunch of weight after high school. But yeah, I've always been a bigger guy.
Oh, your stride must be insane at 6'9", though, right?
Yeah.
How is
Got
that like on your joints? Like as a taller person, do you think that's a little bit harder in your knees? Because I know I'm also heavier personally, so that can like affect my knees long distance running when I try to like take it on.
Yeah,
But
so one of the things, that's one of the reasons I incorporated rest days and then like leg strength training days. That way I'm building up my base because strength training paired with stretching and proper nutrition is kind of how you prevent injuries. and also just not overexerting yourself, doing more than you can actually do. So yeah, it's kind of like easing into it, not just going straight for the 20 miler, just kind of going one day at a time. This first step would be to lose a little bit of weight, kind of slim down a little bit, make it a little easier on my joints. And also just like your shoes make a big factor. If you have bad shoes, you're going to get stress fractures and all kinds of different things, which cause a lot of issues.
Like barefoot shoes you're talking, or what type of shoes?
No, so I have like two different kinds that I like. They're called Brooks, Brooks something. I don't remember the exact model, but they're like 150 $200 pair of running shoes. And then I
Yeah,
also have a pair of Hoka's. They have a big base and they're meant for road running. They have like a curved kind of foot style that kind of they're designed to prevent injuries or kind of help mitigate injuries.
got it. And for even running and stuff, I imagine the first run, you're like, what did I sign myself up for? So, how did you overcome that mental resistance and actually stick with this?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know a great answer for that. I just kind of like force myself to do things I don't want to do. I would say part of it is over the past like year, and this is kind of like maybe not a good motivator, but I went through a breakup about a year ago, and you always want to like glow up after a breakup. So I've been kind of like having that in the back of my mind is like, oh, I need to improve myself. I need to skyrocket my life and make it seem like I'm the good guy, even though I know I am.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like in every man's life, that's a part of it. Like, 'cause I know you said like that's not a great motivation source, but I feel like almost 9 out of 10 gym bros or guys who get into like some type of elite athletic shape, if you ask them their backstory, it starts with, "Oh, there's this heartbreak that happened at this certain moment in my life, and that propelled me into this wild chase."
Yeah.
It-
So
And the
I think
thing
it's a
is,
good motivator.
it can get you to that like first step, but it's not going to carry you all the way.
Yeah. But I
yeah.
think then the love of the game kind of takes over at that point, right? Like you just like no matter what you do, even if it sucks and it's hard, once you get past that, oh shit, I can do this. I can run 7 miles because that's not normal. If I go to my mom right now, I'm like, yo, go run 7 miles. She's gonna be like, what are you actually talking about? I'm never gonna do that.
Right.
So you fall in love with it. I feel like, and then it just snowballs.
Yeah. And then you're like, what's next?
Then you end up signing up for a marathon a few months later, right?
Even to add to that point, without women, none of this world would be built. Because think about it, why are we all making money? Well,
Everything comes back to horniness.
Yeah,
yeah,
to some degree, that's true.
yeah. So even for how to say sales, because I'm guessing you probably didn't start in high school selling or whatever. It probably you just lucked into it. So what was your journey into sales? How did you find out you could convince somebody a product or service would be good for them and get money for that?
Yeah, so it's funny. I actually used to hate salesmen. Anytime someone would mention a salesman, I had this like, oh, I hate you. Like, I don't like you. Get away from me. But then after I graduated high school, I was actually doing van life, living in a van. I quit my job, moved across the country because I just was unfulfilled and just unhappy with where I was at. So I packed up, moved to Florida, and then while I was in Florida, just kind of working at restaurants, bussing tables, meeting a bunch of very interesting people, just living life, living the beach life. And then I got a call from someone who offered me a sales opportunity selling gutters and gutter protection. And at first I was like, heck no, I'm good. I don't want to sell. And then he was like, started to tell me what kind of money he was making. And I was like, what? This guy was making his best month was 50K. And I was like, in gutter sales? Sign me up. I'd never made more than 50K in a year at this point. And so whenever I heard he made 50K in 1 month, he made like 250 that year and only worked 8 months out of the year. So it
Wow.
was crazy to me that you can make that kind of money. And that was kind of like the light bulb. I was like, all right, I'm intrigued. And so what I did was I had like $1,000 saved up. I and I was living in my van, so I didn't really have any expenses except for like phone and basics. So I moved back home, started training with him, and literally just shadowed him for 2 months and just absorbed everything I possibly could and was very coachable and just watched him do from the presentation, from the introductions presentation, all the way through the process, and then the pre-close, close, objection handling. I watched it all. And then I literally just would take my phone, take it in with me to these houses, push record, and then when I get home, I would transcribe it by hand. So I'd memorize it. I would listen to it all back just so I'd memorize all the details. And then once I kind of learned how to do it his way, I started incorporating my own flavor and sauce and making it my own. And then that's really where I started to see the success, was when I started to make it my own and use my own personality, because the guy I was learning from was a little bit more of a abrasive personality than I am. So I had to kind of change the way I do certain things to make it more my style. And then after like a month of just kind of like, or 2 months of shadowing, and then 3 weeks to a month of just taking sales calls and going to these people's houses, I started to see success. And then the first year I made 6 figures.
From somebody
Nice.
who absolutely hated sales to six figures first year. But I really like what you said about going back home and reviewing your actual conversations and transcribing them hand by hand. So, was this something he told you to do, or just you realizing, okay, to be the best, I probably have to go above and beyond? What was the inspiration behind that?
Yeah, it wasn't something he told me to do. He was just like, learn it. And I knew had enough self-awareness to like, this is how I learn best. So if I want to actually memorize and learn this material, I'm gonna have to listen to it while writing it, because that's how I learn the best.
Wow. Not a lot of people are going to do that. That says a lot.
It took a while. It was a long day.
Yeah.
How many hours do you think you were working on average back then?
First 2 months, I would say it was about like 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. pretty much. And then once I actually started running leads, so the appointments, the way it worked was we'd have appointments at 9, or you could have appointments at 9, 11, 1, 3, 5, and 7. So
Hmm.
if you got a packed schedule, you're running leads all day. And that's how it was pretty much 6 days out of the week. Not 6 appointments every day, but it was typically 3 to 5 appointments every single day for like 6 days a week for 2 years until I
And
quit.
and you were driving to these people's homes, right?
Yeah, it was about 5,000 miles a month.
Sheesh.
Well, so I could guess that was extremely taxing. So how did you stay sane and not lose your mind, just kind of just being in that grind state?
Yeah, so a lot of it was, I mean, it took a toll on me. That for a while I didn't have any outlet. I didn't have a way to like relieve that stress. So it did kind of like pile up, and then until it got to a point where I was like, man, I'm feeling burnt out. Like, screw this. But what I did was I started to focus more on prioritizing my health and my personal life. So having hobbies, I got into golf, tennis, working out, running. I needed to find outlets, to healthy outlets, to get rid of that stress and kind of just free up my mind to focus more on the goals at hand.
I think that goes with sales in general because I do a lot of cold calling, and after a while it just gets monotonous because you kind of know what the person's going to say, and in your mind it's almost as if, all right, I'm not really learning as much when I just started this. It's kind of just a grind now. And believe by being able to stick with this for months, just being able to do something that sucks every day, I have a superpower that younger me just doesn't has. And compared to other folks, I know just anything I do in the future, I have a much higher likelihood of just succeeding because I know what greatness requires. So for you, Elijah, I'm guessing you probably have a vision in your head of the man you want to become. So how would you describe, say, Elijah 5, 10 years from now? he's probably speaking with us, what would that man look like? How would he be living? What's the lifestyle like?
That's a great question. So 5 years from now, I would have my own house built on some land, hopefully have a family, maybe have a little mini me running around, and then be in the best shape of my life, have a good relationship with God. And yeah, just kind of sharpening all my tools and just becoming a better person, being as good as I can get and getting better every day at sales because sales is relatable to every other aspect of your life. So if you get good at sales, you're just bound for success.
That's facts. So Elijah, we kind of like to always get into what you think your deeper purpose is on this world. So kind of just bouncing off that question, what do you think's like your overall like purpose is, or at least has been in this part of your life so far?
Yeah, so that's something I've been really thinking about because in the past I've just been kind of going with the flow, not really having any big purpose. Really over the past year, 2 years, I've started to really get closer with my relationship with Jesus. So my purpose, I would say, is to be a good person and not just behind closed doors, but show that I'm a good person in my daily life and not by saying I'm a good person, but by people actually feeling like, hey, this is a good guy. And also, I want to make a difference, whether that's in one person's life or a million. I want to create something that moves the needle and actually helps benefit someone.
Love it, brother. Love it.
So, as far as even kind of putting, how do I say, making it a bit more tangible, would you say that might be a charity, some form of movement, or just giving back in a way where you give your time to probably building a school or a water well? What's one thing you see yourself potentially doing to, how do I say, create that, make it real in the world?
Yeah, tangible. So, one thing I would love to do is give back to the church that I grew up in because the gym that I grew up playing in was just like this really crappy concrete, not very much grip on the court. So it would be nice to have a better gym and like facility there. So that is a goal of mine is to donate enough money to either have it built myself or have them build it. Just a better gym for my kids and the other kids in the church who that was a highlight of my childhood was growing up in that gym. So having that as like a nicer facility and making it more fun and enjoyable would be a big a big impactful thing in my life.
And can I
Because
also ask? Oh, go ahead.
now I was going to say it's something that's real because it's dear to your heart. It's not just some random thing where, okay, let's go to the Amazon, look for like the poorest people. No, it's something simple like that because a gym could save somebody's life. Say somebody
Hmm.
they're in a crappy environment, both their parents, they do drugs, all sorts of crazy things. Just having a space, like a gym that's safe, where they're not having all this craziness around them, that could literally take somebody out of prison and save multiple lives in a whole generation. So, bro, look forward to seeing that gym come to life.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then Elijah, I feel like God has been like a focal point in your life throughout it. And you say that recently you really started focusing more on your purpose. But did you always have like a really strong relationship with God? Did you like grow up in the church and were you always involved, or was there like a time period in between that you were kind of out of it? Could you go over that if you feel comfortable?
Yeah, so I grew up with a very religious background. My grandpa was the pastor of the church I'm talking about. Well, he still is the pastor. He's just getting pretty old, so he doesn't preach as much. But I've always been raised religious, and after I graduated high school, I kind of went through a rebellious phase. I was like, I'm right. They don't know what they're talking about. Screw everybody. And so, like, from about 19 to I would say 21, I just went crazy. I went from being super innocent, super sheltered to being like doing drugs all the time, like everything I could get my hands on, just constantly numbing myself just so I could escape. And then eventually just bad things just started happening in my life, and I started to like do an internal audit and like realize I'm the cause of all these problems. And so after I realized that, and I had some people say to my face like, "Hey, you're going down a wrong path," which I'm extremely grateful for those people, because a lot of people just would be like, "Hey, you do you, man. Keep doing your thing. I love you. All love," instead of just like giving that tough love and to their face, like, "Hey, you're going down the wrong path. You need to turn it around, or this is gonna happen." And so, luckily, I had that in my life. I had someone who was like, "Hey," and it made me realize what I was doing is not what I want to do. So I started turning my life around, and then, and I had also moved away from home. So I kind of moved back home, started reconnecting, getting back in the church, and then I don't know. I felt like a big shift in my life at that point when I moved back, and I realized how important it was to have a relationship with God and to just live that walk in my life instead of just talking about it and thinking about it.
That kind of reminds me of the prodigal son story, because if you remember, he essentially was the heir to the throne. He had his dad's wealth, everything, but he like threw that away. It's like, fuck you, dad. Went out and was living in a pigsty. And he just came back home. He got humbled. But I feel a lot of us have those moments. But a lot of times, say when you do come back, you have kind of that envious brother. It's like, man, I was the good one. I've been doing everything good. And you're taking this guy back. Would you say you had anybody in your circle? You don't have to name names, but were kind of, why are you guys like taking him back after like he kind of went off the rails and everything?
No, I mean, there was some people, mainly some distant family members, who said some things behind closed doors that were like, oh, just like gossip kind of stuff,
Mm.
talking about rumors. But anytime I would hear about things like that, I would either confront it or just ignore it. And whenever I did confront it, they all received it warmly. And I know the people in the church mean well, so I always just kind of keep to myself. But there was a little bit of like, I don't know, childish drama
Mm.
when I first came back, but I just kind of ignored it, didn't go there for them. I went to church for my relationship with God, and then they saw that and they were like, okay, he's actually trying.
Yeah. That kind of leads to another thing, because a lot of people say they're in a tough spot or they don't necessarily like the person they're looking at in the mirror. They're scared of the judgments of other people. It's like, oh, what's my mom going to think? What's this person going to think? And they let that fear paralyze them from taking the next step into the new version of themselves that's kind of urging and trying to come out of them. So, what would you say to somebody who's kind of going through a similar situation where they don't necessarily like who they are right now, but they know they're capable of being so much more?
Yeah, so one thing is you don't have to like yourself to get out of bed and do what you need to do. So it may be hard to get out of bed and do what you need to do, but I promise you, if you just get that foot on the floor and get after it, it will get better. I promise you, because I've been there. I've been toward the point where I just didn't want to get out of bed. It was very, very, very tough. And I hated everything about my life, the situation I was in, what I was doing. I just did not like anything. You're not going to change if you don't make any changes. So if you don't make any changes, your life is going to stay the same. So if you don't make any changes, I would ask them, do you really want to change? How bad do you want it?
Nice. And Elijah, that kind of perfectly transitions to my next question. Was there a moment or like maybe a week or a month where like you woke up and you're like, this is rock bottom? And you're like, yeah, that was when it was like absolutely worse.
Yeah, so I actually spent a night in jail after being a super innocent, sheltered kid. Spending a night in jail is a very eye-opening experience, especially when you have to call your mom or dad to bail you out. at 4 in the morning. And I had had a conversation with my parents about if I ever got arrested for something, that my dad said I'm on my own and he would never bail me out. And my mom was, I was a mama's boy growing up. So she was always like, I'll bail you out, even if dad doesn't know, that kind of thing. So I spent the night in jail and I was like, I'm not calling them. I'm just gonna stick it out, wait till I get out. And then I during that when that happened, I had just started this job. It was a low level entry level job, but I needed the money, so I couldn't miss work the next day because I was still in training or I would get fired. So I was like, if I don't call my parents, I'm not gonna get out in time to make it to work. So I call my mom. She doesn't answer. I'm like, shoot. I waited another hour and then I was like, all right, I gotta call my dad. So I call my dad. He doesn't answer, but my mom answers his phone. And it's 4 in the morning. She recognizes the number and she is like, where are you? And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I didn't do anything wrong. I'm here. I just need picked up. And then she was like crying. She got my dad's credit card, bailed me out. I ended up making it to work. And then when I got home, that and my name was in the paper. So like all the locals, and it's a very small town. So everybody hears about everything. So it was a combination of getting arrested, everybody and their mother hearing about it, almost losing one of my jobs. And I was also a basketball coach at the time. So I almost lost that because someone went and snitched on me to the board at the school. So it was a combination of just everything happening at once. And then I just kind of, after I had a basketball game that night. So I went and coached that basketball game after getting bailed out of jail, spending 24 hours just awake. So I didn't have any sleep, went to work, coached a basketball game. And then when I got home that night, zero sleep, just not in a good spot. And so I drove to my like go-to getaway spot, which is like this cliff overlooking a river. And I kind of just sat there and it was already dark. It was like 9, 10 o'clock. I just kind of sat there and I don't want to say I was thinking about suicide, but I was almost there. I was in a very dark spot. And then I got a phone call from a friend who I think is just, it was like a God thing. Like God was like, hey, he put it on someone's heart to call me. So I got a phone call in a time where I really, really needed it. Got that phone call. He kind of like talked me off of that ledge. And then after that night, I was like, this is rock bottom and it's only up from here. So I stopped doing all the drugs, all the bad stuff that was hindering my life, the negative thinking, the gossiping, just not being a good person. And so I started to really, really analyze what I was doing in my life that led to me feeling like that. And I started to do the opposite. So that was a little winded, but hope that answered your
Oh,
Yeah.
question.
that was beautiful, man.
Mm-hmm. That was great.
Uh, because I'm feeling myself just, it's almost as if I was watching a movie. I'm seeing the scenes in
Mm-hmm.
my head. I'm like, man,
So you said it
look,
ended up in the paper. Does your town like broadcast like all the arrests or something, or was it just like someone
It's
just decided to write a story on you?
when I said small town, I was not kidding. So the town I grew up in had like 200 people. And then the nearest town to it, which is the town that wrote the paper, has like 6,000 people. So it's not much bigger, but it's still a small town. They write a paper about DUIs, things like that, and then just not all of the arrests, but like some of them. And they just happened to write my name
That's
in the paper.
outrageous. Exposing people like that is actually insane. I've never heard of that. I didn't realize
Yeah,
people do that. I'm sorry that happened to you, man.
yeah,
I know
it
we
was
can laugh about it now, but
yeah, it's funny to laugh about now, but that was like a turning point to where I was like, all right, I need to change.
was your phone blowing up? Or people like, yo, Elijah, look, I see you in the paper.
Yeah, that's how people found out was they saw the paper because I didn't tell anybody.
Mm. Is that how your parents find out what exactly happened? Mm.
how did that conversation go? Because I'm guessing it especially probably with your dad, it was probably a bit tense with that one.
He just didn't talk to me for like 4 months.
4 months.
Yeah. My
And you
mom was
guys are
just
living
like,
together?
we weren't living together at the time, but anytime I'd come over, he would just walk right by me, didn't even look at me, didn't say anything. So yeah, and my mom was just like, I'm disappointed in you, that kind of thing.
How did you guys like eventually hash that and rekindle the relationship?
It took time, but it was really just me turning my life around. And then once I started to be a better person, they were like, hey, our son's back.
Do you think that was like a big motivation, not talking to your dad? Or was that like something you'd think about all the time? Like, yeah, I got to get this shit together so he'll talk to me again.
I mean, I don't want to like trauma dump or anything, but like growing up, I didn't have a great relationship with him. He was always kind of like distant and like he was a little bit of an alcoholic, which he's not anymore. But that kind of like bled into my later life when I would do things like that. So like
Hmm.
whenever I would act up or do something he didn't approve of, he would either lash out physically or just distance.
Hmm.
So you didn't know how to properly communicate.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people could relate to that. Even going forward, I feel our generation with our kids, that's one thing I know for sure we're going to be a lot better at. It's just communication because a lot of times parents, they have expectations. Okay, this is how you're going to be, how you should be, and not really recognizing, hey, my child has free will. They're their own person. Instead of me just trying to create the right environment to just help them to be what they're naturally going to be. No, I try to box them in. And then when they start doing things, what they're naturally going to do, you start judging them, which just like makes this weird, awkward relationship.
Hmm.
So, yeah, talking about kids, because I know you said you wanted a little one running around. If you could have a day right now, you could just transport yourself to some ideal future. You have a son right now or daughter. Let me not project. How would that like dad Elijah be? How would he operate with his kids?
It's tough. I mean, being a dad's the ultimate dream for me. Bringing a kid into this world is a beautiful thing. It's also a very important thing. But I don't really know how to answer that.
Hmm.
Um, I would say when I have kids, I would like to be or like to be. I'm going to be in a spot where I can spend time with them and not be gone all the time. Give them what they need in order to mature, grow up, and be a good person in society. And I feel like with the way I was raised good for the most part, but there was a few things that I learned not to do. And so based off of that, I feel like I'm going to do a great job of making my kid ready for the world and not just handing him everything, not doing everything for him, making him smarter, prepared, and also show him the love that I have.
I think those are probably the biggest gifts a father could give to any child because if you do everything for your child, even though it might seem like love, you're robbing them of their own potential.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's sad to see that's kind of what's happening to a lot of kids these days.
You
Yeah.
have too many babied kids.
It goes back to the, that quote. It's hard times make hard men, easy times make. I can't remember the exact wording of it. Sure, one of you guys can fill that in for me.
Hard times create weak men create hard times.
Yeah,
Yep.
the infinite cycle. So, one question that was on the top of my mind before we even started this call, because I think when we talked in Austin, you mentioned you own, I think your own either tiny home or something like that. So, what's freedom for you? Because you mentioned you want to have your own land. And just from the vibe I got from you, you seem you want true independence, not just, okay, I have a bunch of money, but I'm trapped by these material things. But you have actual independence where you're sovereign. So, what's freedom and just being sovereign? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I already have, so I grew up on 40 acres out here in the country. So I have a couple acres in the back corner of our land that I'm going to build on. So I kind of got one step of that done already. I got the land. Next step is to make money to build the house. And then honestly, I want like some kind of like compound. I want like a military, like if anything, like if the world were to go to crap, I want to have, because being in the city is not where you want to be if the world goes to crap.
Not at
Um,
all.
if so that's why I'm in the country. I don't like cities too much. I like visiting, but living in a city is just not for me. But for the sovereignty, just yeah, having a garden, being able to grow my own food, be able to hunt, fish, have a family, have friends. That's what my dream life looks like, is having financial freedom, location freedom, and just not having to rely on really anybody or anything.
And when you say you want to build your own house, how involved do you want to be in that? Because personally, I really want to build my own house, like where I'm actually like nail and hammer. Is that like kind of the same vision for you?
Kind of, not too much of like hands-on. I'm fine with letting them do the work and me just watch. So my dad's a contractor, so I've already got like all the people needed to build the house. I just need the money.
Do you know, if you don't mind sharing, do you know like what that goal is for you financially to be able to like break ground?
Yeah, so I'm gonna do it debt free. So I'm hoping to chunk away at it. So like I'm gonna do little bits here and there. So I'll start with the road, get the road out there, and then after that I'll do like the plumbing, the groundwork, the foundation, all those things, and then just kind of do it piece by piece. Because the goal is to do it debt free. In the next 2 years, I should have it up in the dry, not like the whole house, because I have some big ideas for back there. But I'm gonna start simple, build a structure, and then add on to it.
Got
Yes.
it.
But the goal is to get everything I need to get started, like to get into my first like basic 2 bedroom, 1 bath structure would be 50,000. And then after that, obviously it just depends on how nice I want to make it.
That is killer right there. 50 grand and you have your own house, bro.
On your own road.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
Virginia, for 50 grand, you can buy a taco truck. That's about it.
Yep. And I'm on 40 acres, and then next to me, my brother, he's on like a cabin on a hill overlooking the woods, and he's got also like 80 acres in his section. So like
Mm.
it's my brother, me, and like next to me is my parents. So they have their house where I grew up, the 40 acres. I'm right here in the back section on 3 acres, and then my brother's got like 80.
What state is this?
Missouri.
Missouri.
So you guys could probably build a whole village with all that land.
That would be ideal, awesome. Like building a whole village of like all my friends and family, that would be cool.
There's actually a few people in this space with like who want to create. I'm not sure if you know JD, who's also in Texas. His vision is to build a community. I think he wants to do it in Colombia, but like
Okay.
build like a community where salespeople can come live, train, eat, and just thrive together. But I
That
think
sounds,
he'd buy acreage too and just build a bunch of housing on it.
that sounds awesome.
Well, we are getting towards the end of this. Elijah, typically towards the end, what we do is everyone just goes over their three biggest wins or takeaways from the week. Do you want to kick us off today and just give like this is just for this week specifically, which three biggest wins or takeaways or lessons?
Yeah, so 3 biggest takeaways wins this week. Well, one was getting hired at that new job. That was a win. Win number two was hitting a PR on a 6 mile run this Sunday, last Sunday. And then number three, I would say more of a takeaway is I need to spend more time reading and learning about the company that I'm working for, learning their deliverables, and then also just like sales in general. Because I've been out of it for about 2 months. Not that I've lost it, but I want to hit the ground running and not just kind of like be rusty when I first get back into it. So I'm gonna this week call a friend and have him role play with me and do a little live role play so I can get hit the ground running, and that way I'll see some wins next week for 2 weeks when I start taking calls.
Nice. Kharey, you want to go next or you want me to?
I'd say the biggest win this week is editing these podcasts, which have, how do I say, when you have something in the back of your mind, oh, I need to do this. However, the more you delay it, the bigger it gets, and you're like, I don't really want to do that. But bit the bullet this week and got them done. So now I have that mental freedom and I know how long these edits take. So going forward, it's just getting more streamlined of the process. So I'd say that's the biggest win, actually getting those. So those should be posted early next week. And then second win would, I'd say, actually enjoying the journey. Because before, say me 2 years ago, I'd just be so focused on the end result. Okay, I'm trying to make more money. I'm trying to do this. And forget, okay, you're growing as a person. If you run into a high attractive woman, it's like, nope, put aside females for now, just like work, work, work. However, now the mindset's different. While I'm still doing the same things, I'm actually enjoying the journey this time around. So it's just recognizing that. So that's kind of more of a lesson. And then more tangibly, I'd say a win is just resting because over the holidays, man, I didn't rest. It was just like engaging with a lot of people. And when I got back to work, my mind just was kind of slogged. And this week, I rested more. And just that refresh today, I have so much energy and I got a lot of stuff done early this morning because I just took that break and rested. So, as much as I'm all for work, 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 grind, rest is also equally as important. So, those are my wins for the week.
Nice. And then actually mine relates to Kharey's this week a little bit. So I've been going pretty hard at the gym for a few months now, and like my body was like feeling it, and like my joints started hurting and stuff. So I was like, as much as I love going to the gym, I had to like force myself to take like a week off. I got through it. I'm back in there today, so that's gonna be fun. But I was able to get myself to actually take like a 7 day rest. I'd like in the past I'd plan it out, and then I'd be like, well, I got nothing to do today, so oh well, we're just gonna push through. But yeah, you're 25, your body's not necessarily 18 anymore. Had to learn that the hard way. So that's my first big one. My second biggest one, this is probably the biggest one of the week, is I took a solid like hour and a half, 2 hours. I just sat, no phone, nothing, and just like really meditated on my life and like reflected on my year and really like thought about my purpose and really reconnected and regrounded myself. I think it had such a profound and massive impact. Being completely disconnected from everything for just a couple hours and just fully just controlling where my thoughts are going and keeping them very focused introspectively. So that was like my second big win. And then my third one, I'd have to say it's probably, I got a little bit, I don't want to say the word comfortable, but I got a little bit comfortable in my current role as a setter slash closer. So I think this week I kind of woke up and snapped out of that like I'm on a dream offer situation and just like started like really assessing myself and like the grand scape of my career. That's kind of like the third big one I had.
Think these are all solid wins because it's just we're all evolving.
Hmm.
Because say a year from now we look back at this, we're like, wow, I was really thinking that. So I'm just excited to see as we all progress because that's one of the biggest thing I took from the whole Austin experience. When you're by yourself, you're not really having live interactions, whether virtual or in person, with other guys who think similar to you, have been through similar experiences. It kind of feels isolating. So
Hmm.
even just doing this once a week is definitely refreshing where you realize, oh, okay, the work I'm doing, it actually makes sense because sometimes you're just putting in the work. You're like, man, I can't see the results. What's happening? Then you're like, nah, we could slack off. But when you see other guys and you're meeting them, it's like, oh, now I see it. So for you, Elijah, I'm curious, going into 2025, what would you say is the big thing you want to accomplish, or lesson, well, not lesson, the thing you want to get out of the year going forward?
One thing I want to get out of the year going forward would be to continue the discipline that I have at this point in time throughout the entire year. Not get having any like month off or burnout period, kind of keeping the same discipline throughout. And that's one thing I realized about running. The more you kind of push through that voice of telling you, I want to quit, I want to stop, this sucks, the more you say no to that voice, the easier it gets to keep going. So that's my main focus, is to keep telling that inner bitch to shut up.
Fuck with that. Tell the inner bitch to shut up. Do you watch David Goggins at all?
A bit.
Okay, I was like, this is definitely David Goggins-esque.
I'm carrying the boats.
Yes, sir. Well, guys, I do have a hard stop at 12, unfortunately, because I have another call to hop on. But Elijah, thank you so much for hopping on here today. I appreciate you being really vulnerable with us too. Like, you got deep into some things, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. I love what you guys are doing.
All right, guys, I gotta hop on the sales call. Wish me luck. I will catch you guys.
Go
All right.
close it.
Yes,
Take
sir.
care, bro.